My name is Maya Reynolds. I'm 39 years old. And the night I realized my life had fully collapsed, I was sitting in my car with my 17-year-old son, counting how many hours we could sleep before security asked us to move again. That was the moment everything changed. I wish I could say this story starts with a mistake I made. It doesn't. It starts with a phone call I never thought I'd have to make. And the answer I got still echoes. I called my father, Robert Reynolds, because we had nowhere else to go. No couch. No spare room. No backup plan. Just me, my son Noah, and a car that smelled like fast food and stress. I still believed family meant something. I didn't ask for much. Just 2 weeks. Time to get back on my feet. Time to breathe. Time I thought any parent would give. He didn't hesitate. He said, "There's no room." For words. Flat. Final. No apology. No pause. I sat there in silence, gripping the steering wheel because I knew his house. It has 4 bedrooms. 1 for him. 1 for his wife. And 3 that weren't being used the way he claimed. My half-sister Chloe is 16. She has 3 bedrooms. 1 to sleep in. 1 for clothes. 1 she barely uses at all. That detail mattered more than he realized. I told him that. Calmly. I said, "Dad, Chloe has 3 rooms." There was a pause. Just long enough to feel intentional. Then came the excuse. He said, "That's different." Different how? He didn't explain. Different was doing a lot of work in that sentence. And I felt something harden. I looked over at Noah. He was pretending not to listen. Headphones in. Eyes down. Already learning how to disappear to make adults comfortable. That part hurt the most. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just said, "Okay." And when the call ended, I realized something important. This wasn't about space. Because when a parent says there's no room for their child, what they really mean is there's no room for inconvenience. That night we slept in the car. Windows cracked. Phones charging from a dying outlet behind a closed store. I stayed awake so Noah could rest. That became our routine. I kept replaying the call in my head, the certainty in his voice, the ease with which he turned us away, like it was practice. What I didn't know yet was that someone else had been paying attention, someone who had seen this pattern before, someone who had been waiting for the moment my father crossed a line he couldn't uncross. That part came later. For now all I knew was this. My son was homeless, and my father had chosen comfort over blood without blinking. That truth settled quietly. If this story already feels familiar, stay with me. Not for sympathy, for clarity, because the reversal doesn't come from anger. To understand how I ended up homeless while my sister had 3 bedrooms, you need to know what happened 2 years earlier. 2 years earlier, my life still looked stable from the outside. I had a steady job, a modest savings account, a marriage that appeared functional if you didn't look too closely. I believed we were building something solid. That belief didn't survive long. My husband at the time, Caleb, was charming in the way people often confuse with reliability. He laughed easily, promised constantly, talked about the future like it was already secured. I trusted him because I thought trust was what adults did. That assumption cost me everything. The affair didn't arrive dramatically. There was no confrontation, no confession, just a quiet unraveling. Missed calls, unexplained withdrawals, stories that didn't quite line up. The truth surfaced slowly like a leak. By the time I understood what was happening, the damage was already done. Caleb had been seeing someone else. And while doing that, he had been draining our savings to fund a life I wasn't part of. I learned that numbers don't lie. When he left, he didn't take his clothes first. He took the money. He left behind debt I didn't recognize and obligations I hadn't agreed to. That was when survival replaced shock. I sat at the kitchen table, bank statements spread out like evidence from a trial I didn't know I was in. Every number told the same story. I was responsible now, whether I agreed or not. I didn't call my father then. I didn't ask for help. I told myself I could handle it. That independence was strength. That silence would come back later. I took on extra hours. I negotiated payment plans. I sold things that had once been gifts and told myself they were just objects. Pride is flexible when rent is due. Noah noticed before I said anything. He always did. He stopped asking for things. Started packing lunches without being asked. Children adapt faster than adults. I told him we were fine. Not great, but fine. That word became a shield I used more often than I should have. It didn't protect him the way I hoped. By the end of that year, my savings were gone. Not mismanaged. Not wasted. Just transferred into the cost of someone else's choices. That distinction mattered to me. Caleb disappeared completely after the divorce papers were signed. No apology. No repayment. Just a clean exit from a mess he created. Closure doesn't always arrive. I told myself the worst was over. I believed once the debt was managed, everything would stabilize again. I was wrong about the timing. And wrong about the order. Because just when I thought I had reached the bottom, when the numbers finally stopped dropping, something else began to fall. And it wasn't financial. And just when I thought that was the worst thing that could happen, my mother got sick. My mother didn't get sick all at once. There was no dramatic collapse. Just small changes, missed calls, canceled plans, a tiredness that didn't go away. The kind people explain until they can't anymore. When the diagnosis came, it was clinical and unemotional. Stage 4. No long-term options. Just management. That word did a lot of quiet damage. I remember sitting beside her hospital bed, listening to machines hum, realizing how fragile everything suddenly felt. Not metaphorically, physically. Time shrank overnight. Medical bills arrived quickly. Not all at once, but steadily like a metronome. Every envelope demanded attention. Grief doesn't pause expenses. Paid what I could. I delayed what I couldn't. And when the numbers stopped making sense, I made the call I'd avoided for years. I called my father. Robert Reynolds answered on the third ring. His voice was calm, neutral, as if I were calling about weather, not cancer. That should have warned me. I explained the situation slowly. The diagnosis, the bills, the fact that my mother, his former wife, was dying. I chose clarity over emotion. There was a pause. Not long. Just long enough for him to decide. And he did. "She's not my responsibility," he said. No anger. No hesitation. Just a conclusion. Some sentences don't need emphasis. I waited for more. An offer. A question. Anything that sounded human. Nothing came. I told him about Noah. About balancing work, debt, and hospital visits. I didn't ask for money. I asked for support. He sighed. Not with concern. With inconvenience. That distinction stayed with me. "I have my own family now," he said. As if I were describing a stranger. As if blood expired. That was the moment I stopped expecting him. When my mother passed, the house felt too quiet. No machines. No breathing except mine. Silence became permanent. The funeral was small. Friends. A few relatives. One empty seat I didn't point out. Absence speaks clearly. My father didn't come. He didn't call. He didn't send flowers. He had other plans. Later I learned where he was. At a celebration for my half-sister. A school event. Photos posted smiling online. Timing tells the truth. Noah stood beside me during the service. He held my hand the entire time. Didn't cry. Didn't complain. He was 17 and already careful. That night, after everyone left, he asked one question. "Why didn't your dad come?" I didn't have an answer that wouldn't break something. So I chose silence. I handled the funeral costs myself. Every signature. Every payment. Every reminder that I was alone in this. Responsibility doesn't wait for grief. I returned to work 2 weeks later. Not because I was ready, but because rent doesn't accept mourning as currency. Life resumed without permission. That's when things began to slip faster. Focus. Energy. Sleep. Grief collects interest. The company I worked for announced restructuring shortly after. Then delays. Then silence. Bad news rarely travels alone. I told myself I could survive that too. I had before. I always had. That belief would be tested. Because losing my mother broke me. Quietly. Completely. But losing my job finished the job. And that's where everything collapsed. The email came on a Tuesday morning. No warning. No build-up. Just a subject line that felt too small for what it meant. That's how bad news usually arrives. The company was filing for bankruptcy. Effective immediately. Operations paused. Payroll delayed. Language designed to soften impact. I read it twice, then a third time slower, looking for the sentence that said this didn't apply to me. It didn't exist. Back pay was under review. Benefits were temporarily suspended. Future communication would come as available. None of that paid rent. I closed my laptop and sat still. Not panicked. Not dramatic. Just calculating. Calm is sometimes the last defense. I had savings. Not much, but enough for emergencies. I told myself this counted. That was the lie I needed. Unemployment took longer than promised. Forms disappeared. Calls went unanswered. Each delay added weight. Systems don't hurry for grief. I paid rent with what was left. On time. In full. Because I believed consistency would protect me. It didn't. The next month I couldn't. Not without choosing between rent and groceries. Not without pretending this was temporary. Denial buys time, not solutions. The notice arrived 3 days later. Printed neatly. Slid under the door like it was routine. For them it was. Noah found it first. He didn't say anything. Just placed it on the table face down. He was learning restraint too early. That night he asked if he could help. Not emotionally. Practically. Maybe I could get a job. Children shouldn't offer this. I said no. Immediately. Too quickly. Because I needed to feel like a parent. That illusion didn't last. By the end of the week, he was waking up before dawn. Stocking shelves. Keeping his grades up. Caring more than he should. Pride and guilt can coexist. I sold what I could. Furniture. Electronics. Anything not essential. Memories don't sell well. I stopped buying coffee. Then meat. Then anything that wasn't survival. Poverty is incremental. When the eviction date came, it wasn't dramatic. No shouting. No confrontation. Just logistics. Loss doesn't always announce itself. We packed what fit in the car. Clothes. Books. A few photos I couldn't leave behind. You choose fast when time runs out. The parking lot behind Walmart became familiar. Bright lights. Security cameras. Bathrooms open late. You learn quickly what safety looks like. Noah did homework under a street lamp. Balanced notebooks on his knees. Never complained. That hurt more than anything else. I told myself this was temporary. That we were resilient. That this was just another phase. Hope can be fragile. But at night when he slept, I stared at the ceiling of the car and counted options. Friends I couldn't burden. Programs with waitlists. Calls I didn't want to make. Pride is expensive. There was one call left. One I'd avoided on purpose. One that felt like failure. Avoidance doesn't erase necessity. I looked at my phone. At my father's name. And understood something clearly. This wasn't about help anymore. It was about survival. And that's when my son asked me a question no child should ever have to ask. Noah never complained. That was the first thing I noticed. Not once did he ask why this was happening to us or when it would end. Silence became his armor. He woke up every morning at 4:30. Before the alarm. Before the sun. Slipped into his uniform quietly so he wouldn't wake me. He was trying to protect me. I'd watch him from the driver's seat as he walked across the empty parking lot. Back straight. Backpack slung over one shoulder. 17 years old, moving like someone much older. That image stays with you. He stocked shelves at a grocery store before school. Boxes taller than his chest. Hands red from the cold storage room. Clocking out just in time to make first period. Responsibility arrived early. At night he studied wherever there was light. Under street lamps. In library corners before closing. Sometimes in the car, knees pulled up, book balanced carefully. Focus became survival. I asked him once if it was too much. If he wanted to slow down. If he needed a break. I hoped he'd say yes. He shook his head. Said, "I'm fine." Then paused. And added, "We'll figure this out." That's when it broke me. He started hiding things from his coworkers. Our situation. Our address. Why I dropped him off so early and picked him up so late. Shame is taught quietly. He worried about his SATs. Not about the test itself, but about studying without a desk. Without quiet. Without pretending everything was normal. Dreams need space. I tried to make the car feel like a home. Blankets folded neatly. Snacks organized in a small bag. A routine so it felt temporary. Order can create the illusion of control. At night, when he fell asleep, I stayed awake, watching his chest rise and fall, counting breaths instead of regrets. Guilt doesn't sleep. I thought about every decision I'd made, every compromise, every time I told myself I didn't need help. Pride leaves a paper trail. I remembered promises I'd made when he was born, that he'd never worry about adult things, that he'd feel safe, that he'd have a childhood. I felt like I'd failed all of them. One evening while we were eating sandwiches in the car, he asked me something carefully. Not rushed. Not emotional. He was choosing his words. "Mom," he said, "why don't we ask Grandpa again?" Then softer. "Just for a little while." Hope can come from the wrong place. I didn't answer right away, because I knew what he was really asking. Not for a house. For rest. Children ask gently when they're tired. I told him I'd think about it. That night I didn't sleep at all. I stared at my phone until the screen went dark. Avoidance has a cost. Calling my father felt like surrender. Like confirming every quiet judgment he'd ever made about me. Like admitting he was right to walk away before. Old wounds reopen easily. But when I looked at Noah, asleep with his textbook open on his chest, the choice stopped being about me. It never had been. Perspective changes fast. The next morning after Noah left for work, I sat alone in the car. Hands on the steering wheel. Phone resting between them. Stillness before impact. I rehearsed the words. Kept them simple. No anger. No accusations. Dignity matters even in need. I wasn't calling to argue. I wasn't calling to blame. I was calling because my son deserved better than this. That was the truth. I dialed the number I'd memorized as a child. It rang twice, then 3 times. Each ring felt heavier. When my father answered, I knew this conversation would change everything, one way or another. And that's when I made the call I'd been avoiding for years. My father answered on the 3rd ring. His voice sounded relaxed, comfortable, like nothing in the world was wrong. That contrast mattered. I told him who it was even though he already knew. Gave him a moment to settle into the conversation. Didn't rush. Didn't soften my tone. I needed clarity, not sympathy. I explained our situation slowly. The job loss. The eviction. The nights in the car. I kept my voice steady like I was listing groceries. Facts are harder to dismiss. When I mentioned Noah, there was a pause. Just a beat too long. Like he was deciding how much effort the situation deserved. Silence can be an answer. I didn't ask for much. 2 weeks. 1 room. A couch if necessary. Temporary shouldn't feel threatening. He sighed. Not in concern. In inconvenience. Said, that's not really possible right now. Language creates distance. I reminded him the house had 4 bedrooms. That Chloe had 3 of them. That Noah was 17. Numbers don't argue. He said, we just don't have the space. Then added, you know how Diana likes things. Blame travels sideways. I let that sit between us. Didn't interrupt. Didn't defend myself. I wanted him to hear it out loud. He went on to explain how it wouldn't be healthy for Noah. How instability builds character. How people need consequences. Moralizing replaces empathy. Then Diana's voice joined the call. Uninvited. Sharp. Alert. She'd been listening. She didn't ask how Noah was. Didn't ask where we were sleeping. She laughed quietly and said, maybe this will teach her responsibility. Cruelty can sound casual. She reminded me I'd made my choices. My marriage. My career. My mistakes. History rewritten to justify neglect. When I said Noah was working before dawn, she scoffed. Said, at least he's learning the value of money. Children reduced to lessons. My father didn't stop her. Didn't correct her. Didn't say my son's name. Silence chooses sides. I felt something shift in my chest. Not anger. Not shock. Finality. That's when things end. I asked him one last time. Calmly. Directly. For 2 weeks. For your grandson. The line was clear. He said, I'm not responsible for fixing your life. Then added, you need to handle this like an adult. Dismissal dressed as advice. Diana finished it. We can't have chaos in our home. As if we were a mess to be cleaned up. Dehumanization is efficient. The call ended without goodbye. No pause. No hesitation. Just a click. Final decisions sound small. I sat there for a long time after. Phone still in my hand. Engine off. Breathing shallow. Shock doesn't announce itself. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the phone. Control became instinct. Instead, I stared at the windshield and replayed every word. Not to hurt myself. To remember them exactly. Memory is leverage. That should have been the end. The final confirmation that I was on my own. That my father had made his choice. Endings usually look like this. But something unexpected happened. Noah opened the car door quietly. Sat down beside me. Didn't ask what was wrong. Children know. He said. We'll be okay. Not as reassurance. As a statement. Belief can be steady. And then he asked carefully. Mom, why does Grandpa get so quiet when you talk about Grandma Evelyn? Questions changed direction. I looked at him. Really looked. And realized this wasn't over. Not yet. Loose threads remain. Because my father's fear wasn't about us. It wasn't about space. It wasn't even about Diana. Fear points somewhere specific. It was about a name he didn't want mentioned. A woman he thought was powerless. A truth he assumed would stay buried. Assumptions age badly. That phone call didn't end my options. It revealed them. And that night, my son asked me about a woman I'd avoided talking about for years. My father answered on the third ring. His voice sounded relaxed. Comfortable. Like nothing in the world was wrong. That contrast mattered. I told him who it was even though he already knew. Gave him a moment to settle into the conversation. Didn't rush. Didn't soften my tone. I needed clarity, not sympathy. I explained our situation slowly. The job loss. The eviction. The nights in the car. I kept my voice steady like I was listing groceries. Facts are harder to dismiss. When I mentioned Noah, there was a pause. Just a beat too long. Like he was deciding how much effort the situation deserved. Silence can be an answer. I didn't ask for much. 2 weeks. 1 room. A couch if necessary. Temporary shouldn't feel threatening. He sighed. Not in concern. In inconvenience. Said, that's not really possible right now. Language creates distance. I reminded him the house had 4 bedrooms. That Chloe had 3 of them. That Noah was 17. Numbers don't argue. He said, we just don't have the space. Then added, you know how Diana likes things. Blame travels sideways. I let that sit between us. Didn't interrupt. Didn't defend myself. I wanted him to hear it out loud. He went on to explain how it wouldn't be healthy for Noah. How instability builds character. How people need consequences. Moralizing replaces empathy. Then Diana's voice joined the call. Uninvited. Sharp. Alert. She'd been listening. She didn't ask how Noah was. Didn't ask where we were sleeping. She laughed quietly and said, maybe this will teach her responsibility. Cruelty can sound casual. She reminded me I'd made my choices. My marriage. My career. My mistakes. History rewritten to justify neglect. When I said Noah was working before dawn, she scoffed. Said, at least he's learning the value of money. Children reduced to lessons. My father didn't stop her. Didn't correct her. Didn't say my son's name. Silence chooses sides. I felt something shift in my chest. Not anger. Not shock. Finality. That's when things end. I asked him one last time. Calmly. Directly. For 2 weeks. For your grandson. The line was clear. He said, I'm not responsible for fixing your life. Then added, you need to handle this like an adult. Dismissal dressed as advice. Diana finished it. We can't have chaos in our home. As if we were a mess to be cleaned up. Dehumanization is efficient. The call ended without goodbye. No pause. No hesitation. Just a click. Final decisions sound small. I sat there for a long time after. Phone still in my hand. Engine off. Breathing shallow. Shock doesn't announce itself. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the phone. Control became instinct. Instead, I stared at the windshield and replayed every word. Not to hurt myself. To remember them exactly. Memory is leverage. That should have been the end. The final confirmation that I was on my own. That my father had made his choice. Endings usually look like this. But something unexpected happened. Noah opened the car door quietly. Sat down beside me. Didn't ask what was wrong. Children know, he said. We'll be okay. Not as reassurance. As a statement. Belief can be steady. And then he asked carefully, Mom, why does Grandpa get so quiet when you talk about Grandma Evelyn? Questions changed direction. I looked at him. Really looked. And realized this wasn't over. Not yet. Loose threads remain. Because my father's fear wasn't about us. It wasn't about space. It wasn't even about Diana. Fear points somewhere specific. It was about a name he didn't want mentioned. A woman he thought was powerless. A truth he assumed would stay buried. Assumptions age badly. That phone call didn't end my options. It revealed them. And that night, my son asked me about a woman I'd avoided talking about for years. The next 2 days passed slowly. Not painfully. Carefully. Waiting sharpens awareness. I didn't tell my father I'd spoken to Evelyn. I didn't warn Diana. I didn't prepare a speech. Silence protects leverage. Instead, I paid attention. To my phone. To my son. To the way the future suddenly felt adjustable. Perspective shifts quietly. Noah asked if we were moving again. I told him not yet. That sometimes you stay still until the ground changes. Patience is a skill. He nodded like he understood. Because he did. He'd grown up faster than either of us planned. Experience teaches early. That evening Uncle Mark called back. He'd pulled the full file. Deeds. Conditions. Dates. Paper tells stories. The house had never been transferred to my father. Not when he married Diana. Not when Chloe was born. Not ever. Ownership is precise. Evelyn had purchased it outright decades ago. Paid in full. No mortgage. No lien. Control leaves no cracks. My father had lived there under a lifetime use agreement. Conditional. Revocable. Based on conduct. Privileges come with rules. Mark read the clause slowly. If Robert Reynolds fails to uphold family responsibility, support, and moral conduct, residence rights may be withdrawn without notice. Language matters. I asked what qualified as failure. Mark didn't hesitate. Abandonment. Public neglect. Exclusion of direct family members. Definitions are broader than excuses. Homelessness counted. Funeral absence counted. Refusing shelter to a child counted. Patterns become proof. I felt something settle in my chest. Not triumph. Alignment. Truth aligns reality. Mark warned me my father didn't know yet. That once he did, he'd scramble. Threaten. Plead. Predictable reactions comfort planners. He advised me to say nothing. To let Evelyn handle it publicly. Cleanly. Authority works best in daylight. That night my father texted me. A single line. You didn't need to involve other people. Defensiveness arrives early. I didn't reply. Silence wasn't avoidance. It was strategy. Restraint is power. The next morning Diana called. Left a voicemail. Her tone was lighter than it should have been. Tone betrays intent. She mentioned Chloe's party. How awkward it would be if things stayed tense. Suggested we come by early. Just family. Control disguised as kindness. I deleted the message. Because I finally understood something. Understanding changes behavior. They weren't afraid of me. They were afraid of exposure. Fear shifts targets. Noah asked why they were suddenly being polite. I told him politeness appears when authority changes hands. Patterns repeat. That afternoon Evelyn called again. Asked if Noah needed anything specific for school. Books. Supplies. Quiet. Care reveals priority. She asked if we were safe tonight. Not comfortable. Safe. Safety precedes comfort. I told her yes. She said, good. That matters. Validation grounds. She explained she delayed action for years. Not out of weakness. Out of observation. Watching is active. She wanted to see who my father became when no one was correcting him. She wanted to see how Diana treated what wasn't biologically hers. Character reveals itself unprompted, she said. People tell the truth when they think no one is watching. Truth leaks. The party, she explained, wasn't about Chloe. It was timing, witnesses, clarity. Settings amplify outcomes. Mark would be there. Documents ready. No theatrics. Just facts. Facts don't shout. I asked what she wanted from me. She said, presence. Presence is enough. That night, Noah laid out his schoolbooks on the car seat. Studied under a streetlight. Focused. Resilience adapts. I watched him and realized something quietly devastating. My father had looked at this child and seen inconvenience. Evelyn looked at him and saw responsibility. Vision defines legacy. I slept lightly. Not anxious. Alert. Awareness replaces fear. Because now I knew the truth. Not just about the house. About power. About who had it and who never did. Truth rearranges hierarchy. And the next time we walked into that house, it wouldn't be as guests. The day of the party arrived without drama. No build-up music. No warning signs. Control rarely announces itself. Noah and I parked 2 streets away. Not because we were ashamed. Because walking in matters. Entrances set tone. He adjusted his collar. I smoothed it once, then stopped. He didn't need fixing. Confidence grows quietly. The house looked the same. Fresh flowers. Rental chairs lining the lawn. Valet signs at the curb. Appearances cost money. Inside, Diana was already performing. Smiling too wide. Directing staff. Correcting people loudly. Insecurity mic'd. My father stood near the bar. Relaxed. Unbothered. A man who believed the ground was solid beneath him. Assumptions are dangerous. Chloe was surrounded by friends. Dresses. Phones. Laughter that hadn't learned limits yet. Youth doesn't see context. When my father saw us, his face tightened. Not shock. Calculation. He was counting exits. He pulled me aside immediately. Voice low. Told me we were confusing the mood. Control seeks silence. I said we were invited. That ended the discussion. Facts closed doors. Diana appeared seconds later. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. She commented on Noah's shoes. Asked if we planned to stay long. Status speaks sideways. I didn't respond. Because responding wasn't necessary anymore. Authority had shifted. Guests filled the room. Laughter layered over music. Champagne poured freely. Noise hides nothing. Then the sound changed. The front door opened. And conversation slowed instinctively. Energy recognizes gravity. Evelyn Reynolds walked in. No announcement. No escort. Just presence. Real power doesn't rush. She wore navy. Simple. Intentional. She didn't look around for approval. Approval seeks her. Mark followed behind her. Briefcase in hand. Calm. Prepared. Preparation reads as certainty. My father froze. Not visibly. Internally. Fear doesn't need volume. Diana stepped forward. Too fast. Too eager. Called her mom loudly. Overcompensation exposes. Evelyn nodded once. Then looked at Noah. Smiled. Asked him how school was going. Priorities speak. The room adjusted. Guests leaned in. Phone stilled. Attention recalibrates. Evelyn didn't raise her voice. She didn't scold. She didn't accuse. Authority doesn't perform. She said she'd heard the family had been celebrating milestones. Achievements. Growth. Context before correction. Then she asked where Maya and Noah had been living. Casually. Publicly. Questions reveal truths. My father tried to answer. She held up one finger. Just one. Boundaries are simple. Mark stepped forward. Opened the folder. Read calmly. Documentation carries weight. He confirmed the house ownership. Named Evelyn as sole owner. Listed the conditions. Paper removes debate. The room went quiet. Not awkward. Focused. Silence means listening. Evelyn spoke again. She addressed the funeral she wasn't told about. The grandson she hadn't seen. The daughter left without shelter. Patterns connect. She didn't insult. She didn't shout. She simply stated sequence. Sequence is damning. My father tried to interrupt. His voice cracked halfway through his sentence. Collapse begins internally. Evelyn turned to the guests, apologized for the interruption, then clarified something important. Courtesy sharpens contrast. She explained the house was not being sold. It was not being inherited. It was being reassigned. Words reframe futures. Mark confirmed the revocation clause. Effective immediately. No loopholes. Finality sounds quiet. Diana sat down. Hard. Chloe stopped smiling. Reality lands unevenly. Evelyn turned to me, to Noah, and said, "You're coming home tonight. Home is decided." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Consent was already given. Guests began to leave. Not rushed. Not gossiping. Just aware. Witnesses absorb lessons. My father stood very still. A man who had lost the floor beneath him. Loss arrives without warning. Evelyn didn't linger. She never does. Power exits cleanly. And when the door closed behind her, the house felt different. Because control had returned to its rightful place. The guests didn't leave all at once. They filtered out slowly, politely, like people exiting a theater after realizing the play was real. No whispers. No phones raised. Shock creates manners. The music stopped on its own. No one noticed who turned it off. Silence took its place. Truth doesn't need volume. My father stood near the window, staring at nothing. His shoulders had dropped just slightly. Enough to tell me he understood what had happened. Understanding comes late. Diana paced the kitchen, opening drawers, closing them again. A woman searching for control in empty spaces. Loss scrambles movement. Chloe locked herself in her room. 16 is old enough to feel humiliation. Too young to understand where it comes from. Collateral damage is quiet. Noah stayed close to me. Not clinging. Just present. Safety is proximity. After the last car pulled away, Diana finally spoke. She asked what this was really about. Her voice shook. Not from sadness. From disbelief. Entitlement hates consequences. Evelyn didn't respond immediately. She sat down. Placed her purse beside her. Composed. Authority slows time. Then she said something simple. This is about responsibility. Short lines land harder. My father tried to explain himself. Talked about pressure. About expectations. About how things got complicated. Excuses stack fast. Evelyn listened. Let him finish. Then corrected one thing. Correction doesn't rush. She said nothing had been complicated. He had lived rent-free for 30 years. Raised one child in abundance. Left another without shelter. Contrast clarifies. Diana interrupted. Claimed she didn't know how bad things were. That she assumed Maya had options. Assumptions protect cruelty. Evelyn looked at her evenly. And said, "You never asked." Neglect exposed. Mark returned to the living room. Laid out the documents again. Clear. Final. Paper outlasts arguments. The house would be vacated in 90 days. Utilities transferred immediately. No extensions. Boundaries defined. Diana cried then. Loudly. Publicly. Control breaks theatrically. My father didn't. He just sat down. Hands folded. A man reduced to his choices. Stillness signals surrender. Noah whispered. Are we really staying here? Not hopeful. Careful. Hope learns restraint. I told him yes. Not forever. But for now. Stability doesn't overpromise. That night, Noah slept in a real bed. Not a car seat. Not a borrowed couch. A bed. Details restore dignity. He laid his books out on a desk. Plugged in his lamp. Studied until midnight. Normalcy heals quietly. The next morning I woke up before everyone. Walked through the house alone. Touched walls I'd been told weren't mine. Ownership feels unreal at first. Evelyn joined me in the kitchen. Already dressed. Already moving forward. Grief doesn't pause leadership. She said this wasn't revenge. And she was right. Justice isn't loud. She said it was correction. Of imbalance. Of silence. Truth realigns systems. My father tried to speak to me later that day. He apologized. Carefully. Strategically. Apologies can be negotiations. I listened. Then told him we weren't discussing forgiveness. Only logistics. Boundaries reduce noise. He nodded. Once. That was all he had left. Power fades quietly. Diana avoided me entirely. Packed boxes aggressively. Spoke through doors. Avoidance is admission. Chloe didn't say goodbye. She didn't have to. Understanding will come later. Weeks passed. Noah took his SATs. Focused. Prepared. Security fuels potential. I started working again. Smaller job. Honest work. Dignity rebuilds slowly. Evelyn updated her will. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. Clarity prevents repetition. When the house was empty, it felt lighter. Not happy. Just honest. Peace isn't loud. And for the first time in years, Noah asked about the future. Not survival, but plans. That's when I knew. What happened at that party didn't destroy a family. It revealed one. And sometimes that's the only way healing can begin. We didn't celebrate after that. There was no victory dinner. No speeches. No sense of triumph. Justice doesn't need applause. Life simply stabilized. Noah stopped flinching at loud knocks. Stopped waking up before dawn out of habit. He started sleeping through the night. Safety rewires the body first. He set a routine. Homework after dinner. SAT prep on weekends. College brochures on his desk. Hope returns quietly. One night I caught him smiling at a math problem. Not because it was easy, because he had time to finish it. Time is privilege. I found work within a month. Not glamorous. Not permanent. But steady. Stability beats status. My paycheck went to groceries. Utilities. Gas. Normal things. Normal feels luxurious after survival. Evelyn watched us without hovering. She didn't rescue. She reinforced. Support without control heals fastest. She told Noah stories about his grandfather. About integrity. About responsibility. Legacy done right. Sometimes she watched me instead. Not with guilt. With respect. Recognition restores identity. My father called once more. Asked if we could start fresh. His words were calm. Practiced. Fresh starts can be avoidance. I told him no. Not angrily. Not emotionally. Just clearly. Clarity is final. I said accountability comes before reconciliation. And silence followed. Silence confirms understanding. Diana never reached out. I didn't expect her to. Some people only speak from power. Chloe sent a message weeks later. Short. Confused. Not apologetic. Processing takes time. I told her I hoped she'd learn the truth on her own. That was all. Closure doesn't require alignment. Evelyn moved slowly after that. Health first. Peace first. Wisdom prioritizes longevity. She signed the final documents quietly. No ceremony. No witnesses beyond Mark. Security doesn't announce itself. The house remained in her name. For now. Power stays with the careful. One evening Noah asked me something unexpected. He asked if I was angry. Children sense residue. I thought about it. Then told him the truth. I wasn't angry anymore. I was finished. Completion isn't bitterness. I explained that anger is loud. Boundaries are quiet. A lesson he didn't need to repeat. He nodded. Then asked about college dorms. The future had space again. Weeks later his SAT scores arrived. Not perfect. Strong. Enough. Enough changes lives. He looked at me and said, I think I can leave someday. Parents succeed when children outgrow survival. That was the moment I knew we'd broken the cycle. Not because we won, but because we stopped losing. I learned something in all of this. Family isn't proven by blood. It's proven by behavior. Patterns reveal truth. Help isn't love if it comes with conditions. Silence isn't peace if it protects harm. Reframing saves years. And dignity doesn't come from being chosen. Comes from choosing yourself. Self-respect is learned late. I didn't take revenge. I took responsibility. For my son. For myself. That's enough. The house no longer felt heavy. It felt neutral. Like a place that had finally stopped lying. Honesty changes atmosphere. One night before bed, Noah said something I won't forget. He said, I don't feel invisible anymore. That's the payoff. Neither did I. If you've ever been erased, mocked for surviving, or told you were asking for too much when you were asking for help. You're not broken. You were unsupported. Tell me, how did you reclaim your dignity?